Hello everyone! First of all, wow! Thank you everyone who has found my channel and come by and commented and subscribed. I was not expecting this many people to find my YouTube channel at this point. I only have a couple of videos on there and I'm just blown away by all of the support, so thank you very much. The way that I speak in these videos is kind of under the assumption that you guys already know who I am, because I kind of intended to make them for people who do know who I am. For those of you who don't know who I am, I run an Etsy shop. I figured that's where most people would come from, and I also have an Instagram called Inquisitive Greens. But I guess I'm going to change my tone a little bit because you guys are coming from all different places and finding me somehow for the first time, and that's really cool. So thank you. Thank you very much. Today I'm going to talk about some plants that I really like right now. Let's say right now, because I was thinking like I'll make a video showing all of my favorite plants, but that would be a really long video and my favorites change quite a lot. I think that happens to the most of us, but anyway, I'm gonna go through 10, I think I chose 10 of my favorite current plants that I own, and I tried to dabble a little bit between different plant families, and in the future I think I might do actual plant videos featuring, for example, philodendrons or Syngonium or Hoya, you know, just break it up and talk a little bit about care and how I deal with those types of plants. But for today, I'm just going to show you some of my current favorites. So again, thank you so much for finding this channel and watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you find something useful out of these videos, or at least entertainment, or you know, anything. I just really appreciate you being here. So thank you, and let's talk about plants. Okay, so the first plant I'm going to talk about, I have talked about before. For those of you who have followed my Instagram, this plant is awesome. It is a Miranda Silverband, it's called. Has very similar traits to most other Mirantas that are more commonly seen around. However, it has a slightly different color. They're kind of like a shimmery gray, not as harsh dark lines. The veins are a bit more white. And it gets these adorable little flowers that you see here. Lucky to see them flowering now, although they, you know, Mirantas in general kind of flower pretty frequently. But yeah, this plant is cool. I am working on propagating this plant so that I can put it for sale in the Etsy shop in the future. But it's winter, so it's going slow. But I was thrilled to get this plant. I love it. I love, love, love it. All right, a second plant I'm going to talk about is a begonia. This is a plant that I have been lucky to keep alive because, as I've mentioned a couple of times, I think, or if not, now you know, I'm not very good at begonias. I really like them. There are some of the coolest plants out there, but I seriously struggle with them. But this one I have actually managed to keep alive, and its leaves are getting bigger and bigger. I'm super, super excited about it. It is called Begonia chlorosticta. Let's go with that. It's a name I have not actually spoken that frequently. Plant names I type a lot, but I actually don't have a ton of real life plant friends, so I don't speak their names all that often. So forgive me on the pronunciation. I will do my best. But anyway, so look at this thing. It has polka dot leaves, which I think are awesome. It's shimmery, just incredible, really. I hope that I can just keep this thing thriving. I don't generally do very long with these types of plants, but I'm trying my hardest with that. And by trying my hardest, I mean I have it in that cabinet, which you may have seen that I posted on my Instagram. It is a kind of climate controlled greenhouse cabinet, I call it. It's very makeshift, but it works really well. So in there are fans, lights, heating pads. It's everything to keep plants happy. I have a feeling this one will need high humidity, so I'm trying to keep it in that type of environment. It is planted in PD material, and I try to keep it moist most of the time since I have it in a warm cabinet with a lot of airflow. I'm gonna have to get back to you on care with this one because it's very new in my collection, but yes to this plant. And now I'm going to show you two different plants from the same family, which I think is a very underrated plant family, the Syngoniums. This one is something I've been talking about for a while. I grow these plants here. This is Singhania Models. It's basically a deformed Syngonium. It has the whitish, cream-ish green variegation on the leaves, and the leaves come out pretty dang deformed, actually. They are very unique, and that's just kind of how it goes with this plant, actually. The leaves are not perfect. They just do what they want, and that's what I like about it. I think it's really, really cool. Easy care. I have it in a well-draining soil mixture. I'm gonna put, I guess, down below in the description, because I know you guys are gonna ask. Soil is a huge question for people. What do you use for soil? And that is another video I will do, but instead of sitting here explaining it for every single one, I'll generalize, and then I will put in the description what I mean by that. So anyway, easy care. I'd let it dry out. I'd keep it moist. It is happy, really. It just keeps growing and growing. This is a vine, and as it grows over time, it will change its shape and leaves even more. Just like a regular Syngonium podophyllum, they like to climb. The adult mature leaves are totally different, and with variegated plants, you never know what's gonna happen. Maybe we're gonna keep getting these super cool leaves, or maybe we're gonna get some all green leaves, all white. You never know. Singhania Models. Highly recommend this plant. And now we're gonna talk about a plant that I've went crazy about. This is a Syngonium Redspot Tricolor. So this thing is really cool. I have rarely ever seen it, actually. When I first saw it, I think it was like on Instagram, and I tried scouring the internet for months and months and months to find any information I could about it, and I couldn't, until one day I did stumble across one that was a very pretty penny, but so worth it. Look at this. It has pink, it has white, it has green. It's super cool and super pretty. I love it, and I'm really excited to see what happens with this plant in the future. Every leaf is totally different, and it's super exciting. And also, it's a really fast grower. I mean, under the right conditions it is. I have this in the little small greenhouse cabinet as well, and I swear almost every other week I'm getting a new leaf, and I guess what the next leaf will look like, because it's just really, really cool. You're probably gonna say, why the heck do you have all this moss around the plant? And that is because I'm trying to promote root growth along the stem as it grows, so that I can hopefully successfully cut it in the future and have more little babies. So I like to try to surround the stem in advance and keep it moist, because that promotes the root growth along the stem, making it easier later to cut and already have roots started, so that the plant doesn't suffer when you're trying to propagate it, at least not suffer as much. So far has had pretty much the same care as any other Syngonium I've had. Strong grower, easy, medium lighting would probably be very suitable for it, but I have it under grow lights because I'm trying to put it into hyperdrive and get this thing growing like crazy. Love it. I hope you love it too. So now I think I'm gonna move into the Hoya family. This is a group of plants that I'm pretty new to, I mean relatively new to. I wasn't as drawn to them, 3-4 years ago, but over the past couple of years I started finding varieties that I was like, whoa, Hoyas can look this cool. I had no clue. This is the Hoya polyneura. I've talked about this plant several times on my Instagram, even on my previous video. This thing is so cool. It's just like, it's called the fishtail Hoya for obvious reasons, and it's just the best hanging plant. I haven't managed to get it to flower yet, but I have seen pictures of the flowers and they look incredible. I hope to get that in the future. So the leaves are very waxy and hard and have these really incredible kind of bulging dark green veins that go through it, and sometimes you even see small speckles of white on it. It's just a really, really cool plant. I would say it's pretty easy to take care of. What I do, I'm going to tell you what I do because I've read a lot of different care tips about this plant, but I'm going to tell you what I do because that's all I can base my care suggestions on. I have it in a very well-draining soil mixture, a lot of orchid bark, some perlite, and some regular soil. It was for about a year in a very, very dark room in my living room, and I just let it sit there and would water it maybe every other week very infrequently, and it was happy there for a really long time, up until just recently I saw a couple of yellow leaves when it got dark in wintertime. So I got a little bit nervous and moved it into this greenhouse because I wanted to make sure it was getting the best care possible, because I really don't want to stress this thing out. And since then it's been doing a lot better. I think if you want to properly grow this and keep it very happy, it would like medium temperatures, not too hot, with like a bit of humidity, and let it dry out in between watering. That is my care tips for this awesome little Hoya. Okay, I've got one more Hoya on the list to show you because this is my all-time favorite Hoya. This is Hoya undulata. Hoyas with the silver speckly splash modeling just are so incredibly beautiful to me, and this one has long, like matte, shimmery leaves that are just, it's so pretty to me. I got this plant earlier this year, and so far everything's been going fine with it. It's planted in a very airy mixture, the same as the Hoya, with almost purely orchid bark actually, so that the roots don't sit soggy in water and they have air, yet you can water it and keep it kind of moist at the same time. This is gonna be, I'm gonna try to keep it climbing like this. We'll see what happens with it. You could probably let it hang out of the pot too. However, I like the upward look a little bit better. I water it actually probably more frequently than most people would suggest, but that's what's worked for me, and that's what I can base it on. Since I have it in such a well-draining soil and I keep it in a place that it's pretty humid and warm, I water it maybe once a week, maybe a little bit less. Of course, this depends on the time of the year and the climate in your home. You know, it's not the same for everybody. That's the thing with plant care, is that it totally depends on how you have your plants and where they're located. Gonna be pretty sad if one day it gives up on me, because that tends to happen with me and Hoyas, but I'm learning, and so far so good. Recommended, 10 out of 10. This has been one of my favorite plants for a while. First time I saw this thing was when I was actually working in California at a nursery. It was available, well, it wasn't available, but it was featured as an available plant on the people that we sourced our plants from. However, they never had it. They barely knew anything about it. I don't know what the deal was, but I tried and tried to get it. It never happened. I could not find it at all. So fast forward several years, here I am in Sweden. Love this plant. Even after having it for a long time, I'm still impressed by it. It's just one of the most unique houseplants I think you can have in your home. It's just really, really incredible. The leaves get really large on this. You know what this is. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm pretty sure most of you watching this know this is a Philodendron gloriosum. These are creepers. So these plants, as you can see in the soil here, are growing just slightly under the soil. The stems are. You can see that I have a little tag along. This little allocation just showed up one day. I think it must have been somehow in a soil mix I was using, but it's kind of cute, so I've left it there. So that is not part of the plant. That is an alocasia of black velvet that is a little hitchhiker in this pot. This plant, so like I said, it grows slightly under the soil. That's why you just see these petioles of the plant sticking out of the soil, because the stem is actually buried underground, and then the leaves just protrude out, just like you see this new one doing here. It's really kind of mysterious plant for those who aren't very familiar with this kind of a plant. Just to see them growing this way, it's not very common anyway. This also makes it a little bit difficult for keeping these things under control in a pot, because they want to just get out. They want to keep moving and moving, and as you can see, I'm already butting up against the edge here, which means I have two options. I can either let it kind of grow out of the pot and keep going like so, and then it'll probably start hanging downwards, or I can pull it out into a bigger pot and let it go a little bit further before it fills that out. What I've seen a lot of people do is once that happens, they cut it and then they plant the cutting back into the pot, so you can get a more thick plant, which is also not a bad idea. However, eventually that pot will do the same thing. But it all kind of depends on what kind of look you want. I don't mind having a little single stem growing in here. So care on this thing is pretty simple. It is in a medium lit room. I have them actually in several different locations. In every location they've thrived in dark light, brighter light, not direct sun. I let it dry out quite a bit before watering, because it tends to do better that way. You will see a lot of yellowing along the edges of the leaves if you water it too much. And by too much, I mean when you kind of get that instinct that this needs water, wait a little bit longer. That's what I've learned actually, because it just thrives when it's a bit drier in the soil. But at the same time, make sure it's in a well-draining potting soil. It doesn't like to have soggy roots like most plants. Some do, but this one especially does not like to have sogginess down there. So perlite, good addition. Orchid bark, this will be under the philodendron soil down below. Yeah, very cool plant, beautiful. Velvety leaves. However, I find it to be a pretty slow grower. If you have the capability actually of putting this plant outside in a shaded, protected area in the summer, you will see them flourish. I started doing that every summer here and noticed the rapid growth when you do that, along with most other plants, because of course plants don't want to be inside. They want to be outside, which is where they should be. However, we can manipulate them into liking the home too, right? Since we're talking about philodendrons, I will mention another one which you have probably seen in my other video if you watched it or watched my Instagram, because I'm obsessed with it, the philodendron corisinianum. This is a really cool plant. They can get enormous, let's just say, very large, and that's my goal. My goal is to get this thing huge because I think it's cool. The leaves kind of hang a little bit as the leaves get bigger. They're very kind of droopy looking and even a little bit wrinkly in the leaves, and they're just incredible. So it's a shimmery plant, dark green tint, and the undersides are red. Pretty easy care. You just have to make sure to let this one dry out in between watering as well. It doesn't like to be soaking wet. It likes to be a little bit more left alone. And again, with the sphagnum moss here, it's just to keep around here somewhat humid so that it will promote root growth along the stems as it's growing, just in case I get crazy and decide to cut it, which I tend to do a lot with my plants. I always say I won't, but I end up cutting it. So I did that anyway, because even if I don't cut it, it will be awesome to have a little bit of extra nutrient intake through those roots. Cool thing about these ones is when the new leaves come out, and I have another one to show you, actually a smaller one, but I have it to show you the new growth, because look at this. It's like vibrant red when it comes out, and that's really cool. That's where the undertone comes from as well. So the leaf comes out pretty vibrant red and almost brownish on the top side, and the top side fades into that darker green color you saw on the other plant, and the undersides stay red. Just highly recommended. Now moving on to Anthurium. This is a really incredible species which I recently have gone a bit crazy about, and I know many of you have as well, because they are just the coolest plants. Actually, when I first was introduced to anthuriums, like the most of us, it was just the normal Anthurium andrianum, which you see around everywhere. The red ones, the white ones, the pink ones. Not that they aren't cool, but they are, you know, pretty commonly seen around. And when I started seeing these other varieties, I didn't really realize that they could be this cool. The andrianum obviously is prized for its flower, whereas these ones, these velvety ones, are more prized for their leaves. And I'm more of a leaf person than a flower person, so these are awesome. What I'm showing you right now is an Anthurium Ace of Spades. This is one of my favorite anthuriums of all, both because it's very beautiful and because I find the care to be a bit easier than a lot of the other more high maintenance velvet anthuriums. This is planted in orchid bark. I think it's, yeah, this is pure orchid bark with sphagnum on top to promote root growth, which you see actually it doing already. You're probably like, why are you showing a plant with one leaf? Well, I have a high demand of this plant, so I have to cut it up quite a lot to try to meet that, which even still I can't do. Usually once it gets 1 to 2 leaves, I cut it and repeat. I'm doing an Anthurium propagation video, as I mentioned, both from seed and stem cutting, so you guys understand what I'm talking about. It is very scary to cut up your anthuriums, but if you kind of have an idea of what you're doing, you'll have a pretty decent success rate. I think it's time for me to keep one of these and just let it keep growing instead of cutting it up, because I love the plant. I really do. I think it's incredible. I keep them both in the tiny little greenhouse behind me if I want to like super jump them into growth mode, because that's where they thrive, of course, in a very humid environment. But I also have kept them in the home, in the normal living room, where it's a bit darker, less humid, and they have survived in both locations just fine. So care on this, I would rate pretty simple. You may see, if you don't have a humid home, if you don't have a humidifier, you may see some browning around the edges. That's just due to lack of humidity for the most part. I mean, it could be other causes too, but Anthuriums, the velvety ones, they are known to crisp around the edges when that humidity is not high enough. Love it. Okay, the last plant I'm going to talk about today is a big plant that I'm actually going to pot up for you guys too. As you will see, it really needs some repotting or a new solution. It's totally outgrown its current situation. It is the Rhapidophora decursiva. It's over here. I will see if I can take it over for you actually. Here's a big beast. So this thing is really cool. It grows much like monsteras, climbing, leaves getting bigger as they climb. This thing has really easy care, like super easy. I neglect the heck out of it. I just put it against my wall in the living room and water it occasionally, like every other week maybe, and it just keeps growing and growing. I'm super happy. It's way outgrown this really horrible stick, if you want to call it that. And I'm gonna repot it now onto a moss pole so that it has better living situation. This is pretty pathetic and I feel pretty bad about leaving it this way, but you know, why change things that are happy until they're not happy anymore? And this cannot support this plant anymore, so that means it's time to change it. So here I've used an aeroid mix that's just basically perlite, soil, orchid bark, and a little bit of cocoa fiber, some sphagnum also. I'll put that ratio down below. Gonna wait until tomorrow to water it and take it easy on the watering, because when you repot, you have to be careful with dousing your plant with water because that can cause root rot. So I'm gonna go over that later actually, what I've experienced when you come to repotting. Went a little bit overboard with the pole maybe, but that should keep it happy for quite some time now. I wiped off the leaves you saw just to clean it up a little bit. It had gotten a bit of dust on it from my neglect, and I just attached it to the pole with some various things I had around. It was some little metal but coated twist ties and some floral tape. I try to reuse as much as possible as long as it's not dirty, so that I don't waste so much. So now it looks a lot better, a lot happier. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and for finding me and enjoying your time here. I hope you're enjoying your time here. I really enjoy your time here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and we will see you next time.